Hello everybody. This video is about the making of Bliss dance. It's going to have a lot of information and a lot of beautiful pictures. I hope you enjoy it. It all starts with my dear friend Deja Solis. We met in 2006. When she walked into my studio for the first time, she was skeptical to say the least. So I asked her if I could do a sculpture of that feeling. And as we were working on it, she understood that I would sculpt the real her. After that, we did 8 more sculptures together. Bliss was the 7th. Deja came in one day and said, "I want to do this next." And I said, "Wow, yes, let's do it." This is the first day of sculpting. It's already got so much going on. The hips, the twist, yeah, thighs. You can see Bliss beginning. This is day 2. I'm going to spend some time here and show you how the second day works. And you can see the form is really happening. You can see Bliss is there. I mean, I'm thrilled at this point. Again, I kind of wish I could cast this. Here it is with Revolution behind it. Thought that would be fun. There were a lot of clay sculptures in the studio at that time. I'll show you the more later. So here's day 4 or 5. All the forms are in. It's kind of an awkward phase, but I can see all the shapes are there. And it's interesting because it's not alive yet, um, but it's present and got fingers and everything. And it's nice to see all these shapes that I spent so many years enlarging and welding on. Now it's really starting to pop. The ribs are in, face is there, muscles are starting to really flow. This texture is an area that I really enjoy. This rough edge. Another place I would love to cast and leave it, have a transition. So there's all the texture marks, which I love. And yeah, this is so dynamic. I hadn't really done anything like this before. Yeah, wow. Nerding out on this. Yeah, the face. Yeah, look at that mouth. Belly. Again, I love this texture and yeah, wow. Little artsy shot. 15 years ago. Like I said, there was a lot of wet clay in the studio at that time. So here it is done. And I'm going to nerd out on this for a while. Show you all these angles of the clay. I mean, wow. I didn't even know about doing large scale sculptures at this time. It had not occurred to me to do giant. But as you can see, yeah. Ta! That face sure worked. So now it's time for the mold. I'm not sure if I did this one or not. Maybe part of it. Um, Rubber over the clay, and then a mother mold would go over that. I don't have pictures of that. In 2007, I built this art car and went to Burning Man for the first time. I saw this Michael Christer piece and went, wow, that's how you do big stuff. Dan Dossman and Karen Kusalito's Crude Awakening. Whoa. And Peter Hudson's Hamora Boris. I came away thinking I need to step up my game big time. In previous years, I'd been thinking about rounded shapes made out of lots of pieces, triangles, trusses. And it got me thinking. 2009, it came to me how to build a figure out of triangles, a giant truss shaped like a human body. I worked on models and ideas and refined the process So it was two skins connected to each other with a mesh covering. The leg was the tough part. All the stresses that would be running through that one ankle. So I needed to talk to Celinda, engineer, to see if that was possible. She said it was, and off we went. I've been doing enlargements for 20 years. That's what I did for a living, working with other artists to create larger pieces in all different mediums. So I owned a pantograph, which is that tool you see in the background, and I had tons of experience in this area. This is the armature, which is built to handle the weight of clay that will be placed on it, which is going to be around 2,000 pounds. You're starting to see the surface made out of wires that is about an inch below the surface of the sculpture. I did this for years so that artists who I was working with could see the basic shape of what they were working with to make changes in that general shape before clay would be added. You can really see Bliss dance forming here and the complexity. Here's a little shot for scale of what I'm working on. And here it is finished. So it's time for mesh. And you can see that final product of Bliss is what I used to do all the time, is these mesh structures. What I hated was the internal heavy metal, and that external structure is what solved that problem. That's just about done. Time to start clay. This is the first day, getting that first leg in. Pretty thrilled by that. Day 2, it's coming along. Another scale shot. And there she's coming. This is getting pretty fun. Again, it's just forms. It's not alive at all. But I'm starting to really dig it. I mean, wow. Terrible roughed in face. Now we're getting further along. It's starting to pop. There it is. It's starting to be alive, a real sculpture now. Ribs. Same as with the small one. It's pretty much the same pattern of sculpting and progression from the little one and the big ones. Just, I'm always thinking the same way. And Deja comes in to work on more details, because since this is going to be enlarged, it needs to have lots more detail. So all the anatomy gets intensified. Work on the face. There's the real one. Yeah. And here it is in the sculpture. I do my best. So put these little figures around to show people this is what it's going to be like to stand underneath it. And even I found that hard to believe. So here's the finished. And I'm going to geek out on this for a while here and let you just look at all that anatomy. That right arm is catching my attention right now. The little wrist bone, the elbow bones, ankles. Yeah. All that. Back muscles. Yeah. And everything is intensified a little bit because I was thinking that the mesh would sort of smooth it out, which it did. So luckily on the first try, I understood what to do and have been copying that same level of intensity ever since. Wow. Look at those tendons. fingers are just right. Toes are crunching. Chest, ribs. Yeah. So now that it's done, it's time to transfer this pattern, this structure, onto the sculpture itself. And that took a lot of figuring out, making models, drawing lines on the model. And here's the beginning steps, trying to figure out how to draw that. These are all fails at this point. I'm just trying to understand how to draw, how to get this information onto the sculpture itself. And this is where I finally figured it out. I couldn't draw the external structure, just the internal structure. It was too complicated to do the whole pattern. And getting the pattern to keep flowing past all these different shapes and keep the angles pretty correct and add and remove lines was super complicated. And got some help from Peter Hudson on that one because I got really stuck at one point. Now it's done, starting the mold. There's Lloyd. And we begin. This is we're just crushing through all this because Burning Man is coming. During this process, I built a model of the non-weight bearing ankle to do some testing to see how strong it really was. It did pass, so we kept on going. There it is, up to the waist. All those lines allow the mold to come apart, so it's all bolted together. And then when it's done, start taking it apart like this. And the clay starts to dry and crack like the Playa, which I love this phase too. It's just beautiful. I wish I could cast this as well. And speaking of casting, now I'm making parts in the mold. This is plaster again inside the mold. This is kind of a pain, upper torso. And there's the part with the lines drawn on it. And we begin the build. There's ball number 1. At this point, I had no idea what I was doing. Didn't know how to hold the balls in space. I was just holding them up and hoping for the best. Started with the foot because it was relatively simple, made out of tubing and 1/4-inch rod. And here's Katie shows up on the scene. Here's Nicole welding on the foot. Kyle, it's time for crew, time for help. Here's the first checking out what lights are like on the structure. And it's pretty wild. Look at that purple running through there. So lighting is going to be a thing we need to start looking at. Next piece is the calf and knee. And started to figure out how to actually do this in a more efficient and comfortable way. And it's with this, goosenecks and magnets that hold up the balls so that they can be welded too. Here's the knee structure. And look at that, getting to play with the pattern on the interior. There's Lloyd working on the thigh. Katie and Kirk finish welding the thigh. Goofing off. Lloyd. Good old Lloyd brought the crew together. There's Kirk cutting out the interior. This is the first connection points. They're water jetted, and I had never done anything like that before. Starting the upper torso. There's Lloyd goofing off. Had to do it 1/2 at a time. Julia looking at one of Kirk's pieces. And there she is working away, and my little 999. This is me using the pantograph and the goosenecks, placing the balls in space so that they can be welded to. My daughter Kayla, I think we're related. she is. That was really fun to work with her. Being a welder girl. Bobby. Chelsea bringing the love. And the beginning of the face. And this was something I'd never done before. Rounded shapes, complicated. Working with Lloyd. Placing the interior structure. These had rounded shapes to get the form, the mesh to work over the form. I was just guessing that this would work. Playing with lighting on the completed upper torso, climbing on it. Katie goofing off. Me goofing off. The kids goofing off. And here's Lloyd placing the head. Using the pantograph to get that location. And there it is in place. Not quite welded yet. And some maniac, I don't know who that is, doing a test. Peter Hudson with the new mesh. So here it starts. The first test of mesh over these bumps. Connecting the foot and the calf. This is all happening at the same time. So there's Kirk welding away. Here we are separating the head and neck. Takes a little hammering, but it works. Here's an example of a connection point that was built into the structure first and separated afterward. Honored to have Larry come by and check out what we were doing. There's good old Lloyd again, and another honored guest. And my first real attempt at mesh on the structure. The lower torso. At this point, it starts getting solid rod and heavier material because the weight is going to be supported by this section. Adding a little extra intensity. Katie's in there grinding, welding, and you can see the thicker solid rods happening into that weight-bearing thigh. And there's the thigh, even thicker rods and thicker rods. Doing the connection between those two. And now we're doing a connection of the torso pieces. So first line up the plaster pieces, get those in the right position, and then use the pantograph to line them up together in the big version. This is the first time I'm seeing the piece put together like that. Here's the hardest working man at Burning Man, Little Joe, on the job. And here comes really the most crucial part of the sculpture, where all the load comes through. There's Little Joe working on the base and the heaviest structure. I had never dealt with anything like this, and he made it all possible. Look at that guy. Use the pantograph to line up the heavy members, which are 2.5-inch solid Core-10 rods. There's little Zachy holding one up. They are heavy. Accuracy is key. All the forces for the whole sculpture are landing through this. Solid 1-inch cross members holding it all together. These heavy welds took Little Joe days just for those. Finished welding the cross members. I'm freaking out at this point, hoping it'll all work. Adding the balls that create the surface along the ankle and foot. It's getting ready to go. There it is, finished. And we're going to start installing the I-beams that will hold up the sculpture on the Playa. Again, I had never dealt with anything like this, so Little Joe being there made it possible to do this professionally, smoothly. Look at that. Looks like people who know what they're doing did that. Yeah, gorgeous final product. And now the skin begins. I had hoped that this would be smooth over these bumps, and wow, better than I ever could have imagined. A young Al Stoller comes onto the scene. My daughter Camille came in to work on the seams. It was great to work with her on this project. Look at her. Yeah, being all detail oriented. And I'm working on the face, hoping that it's going to work. And it does. Look at that mouth. Since it had never been put together, we decided to do a test install in the parking lot on Treasure Island. That leg especially was scary, getting it to lift like that, but it worked. There's Kirk inside, tightening up the bolts. Yep, Dominique up at the top. There she is again. Yeah. The easy arm. Lloyd getting that thing to line up. And there it is, done. It's the first time any of us had seen it standing up. It was pretty freaking amazing. JoJo on the lights. Wow. Now it's time to load up for Burning Man. Not finished. We're going to have to finish it on Playa. There's the first lift of the leg. An in-ground install, the last time they allowed that, 2010. Beautiful day. Little Joe doing final tweaks for the big lift. This is just blowing my mind. I mean, all of us are going, wah! Pretty darn amazing. Things line up. Larry Harvey comes by to check it out. The rest of the install goes according to plan. The head goes on. Good. We had lots of final stuff to do. There's the final. Just mind-blowing year. And close it off with Deja singing with her sculpture. Thank you for watching. See you next time.